Hello, everybody. I'm Zenith Rule, and welcome to the Marvel Initiative, where Kat Macberrie, Doug Macberrie, and myself discuss the films of the Marvel Cinematic Universe in order as we gear up for Avengers Endgame. And first of all, I am joined once again by Kat Macberrie. How's it going, Kat?
I'm doing good. I'm really excited. I've been looking forward to this one.
And Iron Doug.
I'm Team Cap.
Of
We're
course.
not there yet.
I don't care.
It's okay, I'm Team Iron Man.
Now, before we delve into today's movie, I just must say there was an idea to have a team of superheroes create movies and make billions and billions of dollars. That became the Marvel Cinematic Universe that nobody thought would actually happen when they teased it in this film. 10 years ago, or actually, I think 11 years
11 now,
now.
yeah.
11 years. 11 years ago, nobody could have predicted that this one film could have spawned a $1 billion franchise that is still going on strong today, that has had more Avengers movies than like I think there's technically four if you count Civil War that has more superheroes than you could count. It's amazing, but it all started with one risky venture: Iron Man. Ooh, boy, Iron Man. This film still holds up today. This film is still an amazing, fantastic venture. But before I get into this, Kat, what is your history with the Iron Man?
Well, let me start off by saying that I am no comic book expert. I definitely grew up with characters and certain knowledge. My dad and uncle were actually huge comic fans, and my sister Kelly actually is a big comic fan herself. I, however, never fully got into it per se, although I was knowledgeable of a lot of characters through them. In terms of my specific knowledge of Iron Man, I did used to watch like a few episodes of the old Iron Man cartoons that would show with like the Fantastic Four and X-Men and all that. I don't remember too much, but I do remember him specifically, especially during the crossover events where he team up with Fantastic Four and X-Men and all that. I never really thought much of him. Like, I just thought like, oh look, it's a guy with colorful armor, cool. Um, but it wasn't until I saw this movie that I'm like, oh my god, Iron Man's amazing. And of course, you thank Robert Downey Jr. for that. Like, I love that man. He's amazing. I can't believe I never saw that before. So yeah, they said before that, with Iron Man, I was like, he's just another character. He seems alright. Now I'm like, oh god, he's my most favorite character ever. Like, that's why I was so excited to talk about this certain movie, because like this is what jump started. This is what brought my interest into the MCU. Of course, that wasn't solidified until Avengers, but still, this is where it started. So.
And what about you, Iron Doug?
Yeah, I mean, my background on Iron Man was like I had little to no knowledge of the character. Um, I I'm more of a DC person, so I've like read some of the, like Marvel comics, but mostly I was like X-Men. But yeah, I mean, I would, watch like the old, Spider-Man, X-Men, a lot of the older animated shows. I didn't really know about the animated Iron Man until like around the time that this movie came out. And honestly, I wasn't really too thrilled by what I was seeing because it's like this guy is basically kind of milk toast and he's, really just kind of defending his own weapons company, and that's kind of the impression that I get from the movie. But I mean, it's still an enjoyable movie from what I've seen. So honestly, I can't really say too much on this subject.
As for me, I actually used to read comic books a lot as a kid. I don't read them as much these days, but I was actually more into DC. The only Marvel heroes I was really into big was like Spider-Man, and that was because of the Spider-Man films. So I started looking into the games and other things. And I watched Spider-Man the animated series along with X-Men. So I knew a little bit, but I didn't really know too much about Marvel continuity, and my friend was just like, okay, let's go see Iron Man. And I saw it and I loved it. And I think personally what really works about it is how this origin is done. I think I forget who said this, but I believe it's the perfect statement. This is the best superhero origin that I have seen because it's not overblown. We don't necessarily like a need to focus on a villain too much. It's more a character piece about Tony Stark, and I just from the get go I like the idea of it. Stan Lee wanted to create someone that people normally hate, this war profiteer, this person that was getting lots and lots of money for dealing arms that he thought was protecting America, only to find out that his weapons were being used in other countries, and he has to struggle with his own self-doubt about what he and his father's company has been doing. And I think that really grips me. It's like this character that normally you would not like, but he is a noble individual, and everything he does is out of guilt for stuff that he did not realize his company was doing. And the character growth throughout this film is really, really great. What do you think, Kat?
Oh yeah, definitely. One of the things that's really unique about Iron Man is that unlike a lot of superheroes that, kind of start off as jerks and then they go through some traumatic experience that suddenly, turns them into like this do-gooder like superhero type, Tony Stark kind of remains the same asshole he is, except now he's an asshole for the right reasons. So, like, he still maintains like a lot of likability in that sense. It's like on the one hand, you can see how the person he started off with wasn't a great person and not really someone you should be rooting for, but the way they do his arc and everything, like by the end of it, you are like rooting for him completely. Like even though he still like insults people and still acts like a privileged prick at times, like you still can't help but find it endearing. And like I think like Robert Downey Jr. really portrays that like extremely well. Like I think if it was anybody else, it wouldn't come off as good.
Yeah, I think Robert Downey Jr. does a fantastic job of towing this line of being a jerk, but not being an unlikable jerk. And he's very eccentric. Obviously, you can see his genius tendencies. You see him tinkering with stuff. He builds every single like thing that it invents everything. So he's clearly smart. He's clearly someone who's very scatterbrained. And Robert Downey Jr. brings this across. I think his performance is fantastic. What do you think, Mr. Doug?
Yeah, I mean, personally, I've never really liked Tony Stark. I will say I really enjoy Robert Downey Jr.'s portrayal of him. I can appreciate him, but the character of Tony Stark, I could never get behind. And I'm like, I get, what everybody's saying, and, he has, he goes from being like kind of the selfish, weapons guy to having that change of heart, and you are supposed to like him. And I might have, had there not been more movies with him where they kind of just make the character do the same thing over and over again. But yeah, I mean, like I said, just ultimately, I've never really been a Tony Stark fan.
I can see that. There's stuff that we're going to be talking about in later films, faults of Tony Stark. What really got me on board on Tony Stark personally was the fact that he has shrapnel embedded in his heart, and like, he only had a week to live, so he made a device that allowed him to live longer. And it's, you know, you never know when the shrapnel is actually going to kill him. He has a device, it's going to power his heart and his armor and allow him to not die, but he always has this kind of air of a man who is on his deathbed, and he wants to do something great before he goes out, something worthwhile. That's something I found to get behind, because I thought, in general, yeah, he is a jerk. He's a playboy, billionaire, philanthropist, and there's a lot of things about him that are jerky, but when you're staring death in the face and you realize what your company has been doing, like, he can't rest. I watched some of the deleted scenes on the Blu-ray, and there's a really great scene where he's just watching, watching the news and trying to sleep, trying to go to another party, but he can't. All he's thinking about is the people that are being destroyed by his own weapons, so he builds the armor. It's just, that's the thing I like about his character. He's driven not by a desire to be noble, but out of a desire to do something to make things right. And I find that interesting.
I mean, I guess you could say that. I mean, he does kind of have, he is kind of humbled when he, gets imprisoned and, has to see the world through his, cellmate's eyes, and realizes that, hey, maybe I need to do some good instead of bad with my company. So I'm like, in that sense, yeah, I could see that.
Mm-hmm. There is a bit of, post-traumatic stress disorder for his character, speaking simply from this film, not later films, and we're going to get to later films, but for this film, the event of everything that happened, in, getting shot, the shrapnel in his heart, using the Iron Man suit, getting away, that has kind of a huge impact on him, and he has trouble resting, he has trouble just doing nothing, so he's driven to do something to make amends and to appease his conscience. And so I think that plays a large part of it too, is that, he's haunted by the things that he's seen.
He's so much in trauma that when he asked for an American burger upon his return, he gets Burger King. I mean, I like Burger King, but that would not be the first burger that I'd reach for.
Actually,
no.
I read an interesting thing about that, which kind of explains now why that scene is in there. So apparently, back when Robert Downey Jr. was trying to get clean and everything, he was on one of his benders, and he was in his car, and he was hungry, so he got this Burger King burger, and after he ate it, he thought it was the most disgusting thing he ever ate, that it actually encouraged him to throw that along with all of his drugs out of his window and make him reevaluate his life. So I think he kind of had the idea to help incorporate into the script and everything, because the thing is a lot of the dialogue for the script wasn't written when they started filming, so a lot of the actors kind of had to improvise, and of course Robert Downey Jr. is great when it comes to that stuff, and he did multiple takes, and I think he just had that idea that I want to incorporate that Burger King scene, because it's kind of the same thing where once he goes through all that crap in Afghanistan and he starts reevaluating his life, what's the first thing he does? Eat the most disgusting thing he could think of and then start anew.
Yeah, kind of purge himself. And I love that scene because, he sits down, he has a press conference, he asks everyone to sit down, he sits down himself as he gets his bearings, and then he stands up and says, we're no longer making weapons as for now, until I can see the direction of the company heading forward. And it's it's just another realization moment for him. He's finally been saved, he's had a kind of a purging of his old self. Tony Stark died and was reborn as Iron Man in that process.
I just find it funny because Burger King also did a lot of promotion for Iron Man. It's just so ironic to me that it's like it's something he considers totally gross, and yet it's promoting his name. Something I'm thinking back to like the Krusty Burger.
So yeah, like the rest of it is more a character piece. Overall, it is a simple story. A person realizes how wrong they were. They try to make amends. He fights some people who are using his arms in, I think, Iraq, or like it's meant
It's
to be.
Afghanistan.
It's Afghanistan, but it's meant to be a parallel to the Iraq War.
Well, no, it was the Afghani War.
Well, I thought in modern comics they actually used the Iraq War as a parallel. So
Well, I don't know
yeah,
about the comics, but I know in the original Iron Man, it actually takes place during the Vietnam War, which is like obvious given how his enemy is the Mandarin, but was it the director Jon Favreau? He didn't want to do a period piece. He wanted to like update it, and since this was 2008, it was like around the time of the Afghani War, so that's what he chose. So,
Okay. It's hard because the origin changes and modernizes itself with each iteration. So trying to get your bearings is a little bit tough.
And keep in mind, the Iraq, and the Afghani conflict were still going on, like, around that same time. So it was like, it was basically the war in the Middle East, is what it was. Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, like, they fight some people in the Middle East. He saves some people, and then he's betrayed by the person at the company who put out a hit on his head, and we find out that Obadiah Stane is a bad guy who tried to have Tony Stark killed. And,
Gee, with a name like Obadiah Stane, he could never be evil.
yeah, they only had him on the cover of a magazine looking down on the world.
I mean, you could see it coming a mile away, especially the way he reacts to, like, Tony coming back and, like, running the company. He's transparently evil. And the thing about Obadiah Stane is that he's not a complex bad guy, but I think what works is the portrayal of him, because the actor sells every single scene. He's not quite as good as Robert Downey Jr., but he's deliciously evil, and one of my favorite scenes is when he tries to steal the technology that Stark developed that, like, powers his heart, and he perfected it, and he's yelling at his group of scientists, and he's just, Tony Stark built this in a cave with a box of scraps. Like, he just sells it, and that's the most quotable line of the movie, by the way.
Yeah. It's just so funny, seeing the dude as, like, this, like, clean-shaven, like, evil businessman. Because, like, it's so, like, completely opposite of what everyone knows Jeff Bridges for, but he totally sells it. And from what I heard, Jeff Bridges actually is, like, quite a serious method actor. Like, he actually was a little uncomfortable doing the whole improv thing, because he's the type of person that will memorize their lines down to a T and make it his own. So for him to, like, be able to, like, do that and improvise his way along with Robert Downey Jr. is actually quite impressive.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, there was a little, in terms of, like, revealing that he's a bad guy, like, there are a lot of, like, subtle hints. Like, I get that the whole thing is not supposed to be subtle, but there is one scene where he's visiting Tony, and he's playing on the piano, and the piece that he's playing is actually written by Antonio Salieri, who a lot of people know. Salieri was, like, the rival to Mozart, who he always envied because he was naturally gifted. So,
Ooh.
See the parallel?
And yeah, for a Phase 1 villain, he's not very complex. I would not say he's anything more than, I want to take over the company because I'm greedy and I like profiteering. But again, there's some really great scenes with him. Like, there's a scene where he goes to the Afghani camp and meets up with the people who he used to try to put a hit on Tony Stark. and he ends up just taking them all out easily and without needing to pay them. And like he shows how ruthless and evil he is with his big grin, and just the portrayal to me is what really sells it. Doug, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I think definitely Jeff Bridges sells the role. I mean, honestly, the dude. Come on, the dude abides. But it's like, yeah, I find him definitely quite intimidating, especially like in the scene where Pepper is trying to download that information, and it's just like this, tense, quiet, interrogation sort of thing, but he's being coy about it, and I love that about him.
And then he finds out, like, right as she's leaving the room, that files were downloaded and it's on. And there's another really great scene when there's Shield storms the facility and it's completely dark and you don't know where everything's coming, and all you see is like a pair of eyes looming from the darkness and Jeff Bridges' metallic voice coming out. It's like and he just starts wailing on some people. He has the intimidation factor.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing I will say is kind of a detriment, and here's the thing, I like the actor who plays him a lot in this, but War Machine isn't really super necessary for the film.
Wait, you talking about Rhodey?
Yeah, I'm talking about Rhodey, because Rhodey is in the film and he's a part of it. They actually had a couple deleted scenes where he was actually doing more stuff in it and helping in the final climax, and I thought it was interesting that they chose not to have that. And it's like, I really like the actor who plays Rhodey in this. And don't get me wrong, Don Cheadle in the other movies is great. It's just, you can clearly tell the difference. And I don't know, like, I like Rhodey in this film as an actor, but I just feel like his presence wasn't fully necessary. They established that he's a friend of Tony Stark. They established that he has a friend at the airbase who's helping out because that's how he's not blown out of the sky as Iron Man. But other than that, he doesn't really help that much. And there's a scene where he could have, where he mentions to Rhodey, "Oh, hey, I have a project that I've been working on. I want you in on it." And he's just like, "I think you need to get some sleep." And I'm just like, it felt like a tease a lot of the film.
I think that was the point, because they do tease about War Machine toward the end. I mean, I guess Rhodey's supposed to sort of like be his conscience in a way. And I mean, given how the two are polar opposites, with him being of like a strict military background, whereas Tony's kind of like a loose cannon, like they're supposed to balance each other out and show that, he doesn't have a bunch of yes men around him all the time, that there is somebody there to like try and make him see reason and try to keep him on like a straight path. But I do agree he could have done a little more, but again, I think they were just saving that for the sequel.
Yeah, like I mentioned, there was a deleted scene where I think he takes one of Tony's cars and slams into the bigger Iron Man robot, and they cut that. Now, yeah, it's not a fully 100% necessary scene, but I think that adds to his character rather than just being a supporting member of the cast. But that's the only like slight detriment, because otherwise I do think this is a solid film and has a standard 3-act structure. It's a character piece about a man who goes through his weakest moment. He gets out of it. He decides to turn things around. He becomes a hero. He finds out one of his company people is betraying him, and they have a big Iron Man fight and throughout the entire film. And there's a lot of good payoffs and build up and payoff. Like they set up the whole icing of the Iron Man armor so they can use that later in the film. They set up like how the reactor works and stuff like that, and there's just a lot of good build up and payoff. It's very well acted. It's very well executed. There's some things that are just really well put together about it. I mentioned the deleted scenes before, but one of the deleted scenes in the film was that near the end of the film, Jebediah, not Jebediah, near the end of the film, Obadiah falls into the reactor, and that's how he's kind of blown up. Like his suit is shorted out, and he falls into the reactor. Well, there's actually an alternate ending to the film that was slightly different, and I was interested to see that they took this out, but it makes more sense. His armor was basically shorted out, and he starts hanging from the roof. Tony tries to pick him up, and then he ends up falling into the reactor. And it's like they make it more Tony's fault that this guy is dead. And it's interesting how they did the deleted scene. I prefer the original ending, but this was, to me, something different to see in the film. What do you think, Kat?
I mean, regardless of how you look at it, Tony is inadvertently responsible for Obadiah's death, but then again, he's a bad guy. He already tried to kill him twice. So, at that point, I really wouldn't, like, blame him, or, like, you know, like, if he dies, like, that's totally on Obadiah, because he made his own choices, and, I mean, Tony's no Batman. I mean, I know there's a huge parallel between the two, but the biggest difference is that, you know, Tony isn't about, like, not killing people, and frankly, I'm under that belief system, too, because, like, why would you let somebody who wants you dead continue to live and hurt people? Like, that's the only thing I could never get behind with Batman, hence why I like Tony Stark a little more, because it's like, you know, let the guy kill himself. Like, you don't have to lift a finger to save him, and, you know, you stop a threat. Like, that's the way I look at it. So, you know, regardless of, like, whatever ending they would have used or did use, you know, I think it was fitting nonetheless, as long as he did die. And I know that kind of sucks in terms of, like, the villains, because pretty much up to a certain point, it was always just the one villain of each film, until, I guess, about, like, Thor or whatever, but still, you know, like, I do like Marvel's policy on, hey, this guy's evil, he's hurting people, let's put an end to it. Like, that's honestly how I think it should be.
What do you think, Doug?
I mean, it depends. Obviously, with Obadiah, yeah, he kind of made his own grave, and, you know, yeah, it's probably better that they went with, you know, he basically does himself in versus, you know, Tony basically being responsible for the death. I mean, honestly, I'm more in the Batman house in that, you know, I do think there should be the chance for a villain to reform. Obviously, I know that doesn't always work, but, you know, I think it's just kind of extreme just to kill someone unless they are that much of a threat, and really they, you know, should not be allowed to live and, you know, possibly hurt more people. In that case, you know, I'm on board with, you know, killing the villain. But, you know, obviously your situations will vary. I mean, I can't really say much more on the matter than that.
For me, I mean, they already showed him killing in the Iron Man suit before. But I like that they don't have him personally killing Obadiah, because Obadiah had such a connection to him. And I feel like, given the chance, yeah, he would try to save Obadiah, but this takes away the choice from him. It's like, I feel like Tony has enough on his conscience already, so using the original ending personally is better for me. Another thing I want to talk about, because Kat, you mentioned that a lot of the film was improvised. Well, at the very end of the film, Tony holds a press conference where they talk about the Iron Man armor, and they're just supposed to say, you know, they have cards from Shield. Phil Coulson has debriefed everyone. It's just a training exercise, all this jargon, and he goes up and he says, "The truth is, I am Iron Man." And the thing is, this was improvised. He was actually not supposed to reveal that he was Iron Man at the end of the film, but they just rolled with it. And I think this was a brilliant decision. Kat, what are your thoughts on that?
I think that was the best decision they ever made, like, out of everything in that entire movie, personally. Because you would never expect that, because every single superhero film, comic, TV show, whatever, usually, like, unless they're characters like the Fantastic Four or, you know, like, so one of the other, like, known heroes in the Marvel Universe, typically they try to keep their identity under wraps. And, like, the whole idea behind the secret identity is that, A, you can still live a normal life while superheroing. B, you can protect those closest to you, and C, you have a level of surprise you can spring upon your enemies because they won't see you coming in your human disguise. However, with Tony Stark, everybody knows who he is. He is a huge self-promoter. He is a huge narcissist. He loves the attention and everything. He's theoretically one of the only people in this universe who could make that sort of armor and fund it and everything. Like, he's basically Bruce Wayne, except whereas Bruce Wayne only puts on a front in terms of promoting his company, just, you know, so he can keep financing his superhero work, Tony, like, relishes any chance he has at, like, you know, getting glory from all, like, the tech and stuff that he makes. So I think this is actually not only, like, extremely within character of him to reveal that, yeah, I actually am Iron Man, and I don't care who knows, come at me, bro. Like, not only that, but it breaks completely from everything we've ever known in any superhero universe, and it's extremely refreshing. And granted, it sets off a huge chain of events, you know, onward, and kind of does screw a few people later on, but I love the twist ending. That's what, like, made me, like, fall in love completely with this movie, because I'm like, oh my god, I never would have seen this coming. This is amazing.
And what do you think, Doug?
I think Iron Man has a huge ego. There, I said it.
No.
Yeah.
No.
No, I mean, honestly, I think it's one of the reasons why I don't like him, in that he is just so, you know, he doesn't really have a filter, and rather than think of, you know, protecting people close to him and, you know, his own identity, it would honestly be a better idea for him to have have his identities be separate. But of course, because he's such a big shot, he has to let the world know, and it winds up biting him in the ass much later on down the line. So yeah, like I said, it's one of the reasons I do not like Tony Stark.
I really like this. First of all, before we even talk about it, I love how when he says I am Iron Man, they go into Ozzy Osbourne singing the song, which is so good. Like, they actually just go into the song Iron Man at the end credits. I'm like, it's perfect. That's perfect. But I think what I like about this is Tony Stark had already had a hit put on him. He's already a huge public figure. Him trying to have a secret identity would not work, because there are people following him wherever he goes, and they would probably find out that, oh yeah, there's a suit of armor coming from Tony's apartment or Tony's area. I think he doesn't necessarily need a secret identity because he's too public a figure. I think what he's doing is putting the target on himself rather than the people around him. And granted, Pepper does kind of take a bullet for him in a little ways, and to a lesser extent, Phil Coulson, whose first name is Agent. But, I think from Tony's reasoning, I think it makes sense. You're this public a figure, you're not going to be able to be super secret. In the comics, from what I understand, Iron Man was supposedly Tony Stark's bodyguard. Which I don't understand how that works. So, but I think personally this makes sense. He's telling the world, I am Iron Man, I have the technology, I'm going to privatize world peace. it does bite him in the ass, but I think it makes sense for his character and for him.
If I may offer a dissenting remark, and again bring up, the Batman argument. Um, years, like earlier this decade, there was a Batman series called Batman Incorporated. In it, Bruce Wayne basically comes out and says that he is responsible for Batman. I mean, obviously, people would be making the connections for, Bruce Wayne and Batman for years, and it's like, without even necessarily saying it, or they did say it. But yeah, in this case, it creates sort of this buffer zone for him to say that, he is, rather than being Batman, he is funding Batman. And that he basically wants to do kind of the same thing, in that he wants to start like kind of this worldwide series of Batmen who, go all over the world and, fight. But like I said, that basically, I think that would have worked better in Tony's favor if he'd done something like that, in that, he says he's responsible for Iron Man, but he is not Iron Man. But that, basically he is, the head of Iron Man, but hey, there could be somebody else in the suit or suits.
I mean, personally, I just don't think that would have worked, because think about it, in the film, there's that reporter woman, the one he sleeps with at the beginning and then shows up again throughout the film. Like, she was able to find out things going on in Tony's company that even he wasn't aware that was going on. Like, she knew about his weapons being used by terrorists. She knew about how the weapons were, being used by these terrorists in that one village to hold all of the hostages and, basically try to ransom them off and everything. She even knew about Obadiah's ploy to actually remove Tony from his position as CEO. Like, if she could find all that out, there's no way he would have been able to hide the Iron Man stuff from her. Like, if someone like her could find that out, who's to say that nobody else could find that out? And given how Tony's really bad at keeping secrets, as we obviously saw, it would have only been a matter of time before he blew his cover. So I think just putting it out in the open for everybody to, to know is probably, the better option, despite, all the shit that happens later on down the line. I mean, that's just my personal view of it.
And we have another thing to discuss. The first end credits stinger. Now, at the very end of the credits, Tony Stark goes into his mansion, and who does he find? Samuel motherfucking Jackson as Nick Fury, ready to talk about the Avengers Initiative. Now, first of all, a lot of people still leave the movie theater before the end credits are done, which, shame on you, there's always something after the credits, but this was our first inkling that this was a thing. And back then, nobody thought this was going to happen. People were like, oh, the Avengers, it's totally not going to happen, guys. Now we've had 4 Avengers films.
Yeah, honestly, I was surprised too. And I remember I had to go to the bathroom during the credits, but my sister's like, no, you have to come back. There's going to be the end scene about the Avengers. And I'm thinking, yeah, okay. I came back just as they were showing that, and I'm like, holy shit, they actually did reference it. But yeah, even then, I wasn't fully confident about the Avengers thing, because I mean, this isn't the first time that we've had a film try to promote a sequel or something, only for it to never happen. So I mean, heck, so Super Mario Brothers actually did this. They were one of the first films that actually had a post-credits scene too, teasing a future sequel, which again never happened. So again, I wasn't fully convinced, and after I saw the Incredible Hulk, granted, they did tease the Avengers in that too, but because of that, my feelings on that movie, I didn't fully believe them. Hence why I didn't bother watching Thor after that. It wasn't until Captain America came out that I'm like, huh, They seem to be really serious about this. And then, of course, they drop that fucking teaser, and I'm like, wow, they actually are doing this.
Yeah, like, say what you will about some of the individual films about Phase 1, but they were committed to making this work. And I was not believing at the time, but now I'm just like, nobody saw this shit coming. Nobody. Nah, we're gonna be talking about the Hulk next time. But yeah, the Iron Man is a solid start. Doug, what do you think about the end stinger?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the end stinger wasn't really a new thing, but obviously, it was like because of this movie, it really rose to prominence, and like every movie just started using it. After Iron Man. I'm like, and I mean, yeah, I mean, for the first time when I saw it, because thing is, I'd had that spoiled for me, so I didn't get quite that same effect. But I was also kind of like Kat and thinking, yeah, I'll see it, I'll believe it when I see it, especially as, like, Marvel had kind of had a lot of misses in terms of movies, in the past. And, you still had to go through, like, a few other
Fantastic Four, cough.
you still had to go through a few other movies before we could even get there. So it's like, just to see, Iron Man, it's like, okay, this is just one. But obviously, my tune changed when we actually, freaking got an Avengers movie.
Yeah. Okay, so I think this is a good time to go into overall thoughts because for the most part this is a simple film. It's a character-driven story and the characters are likable, they're well acted. I feel what works about it is the character of Tony Stark, played by Robert Downey Jr. The villain is kind of stock, but Jeff Bridges sells it. They do a great job of endearing me to these characters. The fight scenes are great. The humor I thought was on point. I had a great time watching this film again, and just the teaser for more is just a lot of fun. This is the perfect origin story for me. It's not bogged down too much by villains and all this other stuff. It's a simple character driven story that I like, and overall I had a blast watching it again. I think this is still one of the better Marvel films. That it holds up really well. I'm not sure how it stacks up with the rest of the Marvel Universe. We're going to get to that as we continue down the line. But for a first film, this is fantastic. What are your final thoughts, Kat?
Oh, I still love this movie to death. Because, like I said, this is what got me into the MCU. Like, I never thought Iron Man would ever be my favorite character, and yet he is. Like, and it's kind of weird because, like, I never thought about this till recently, but like I actually kind of sympathize with Tony in a lot of regards because, I wasn't the best person growing up either. I did a lot of stupid shit. I said a lot of stupid shit and like wasn't that good of a friend. Plus, also like him, I have a medical condition which eventually might kill me later down the line. But I take medicine and do things that will keep it in check. So, in that regards, like, he really I really sympathize with him both as, like, a character and everything. Plus, I also love the concept of Iron Man, that he's, like, this guy who's, like, all-powerful with all these weapons and stuff, and he could fly and do all, like, these impossible things, and yet inside of him is, like, this weak, vulnerable man, but he tries not to show it, even though it always comes out regardless. And, the fact that they managed to update his story while still keeping true to the origins is, like, really impressive. Because this could have easily gone the wrong way, especially if they kept the Mandarin as the first bad guy. But I think they reinvented it beautifully. And granted, unfortunately, don't keep that up further down the line with the sequels. I still think, like, the overall character of Tony is still, pretty accurate and still manages to remain sympathetic despite all the stupid stuff he tries to do, because he's basically chaotic good in that, you know, he does whatever it takes for the greater good, even though it doesn't... Shut up. Even though it doesn't always work out. But yeah, like I said, he still remains my favorite. I still love this movie, and you know, I'm not looking forward to the sequels, but I'm still looking forward to more Tony. So yeah.
All right, Doug?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, despite my thoughts on Tony Stark, Iron Man, I can't deny that this is a very solid movie. And, you know, between with this and another movie that came out the same year, The Dark Knight, it really shows, you know, the evolution of the superhero film and how, like, now you actually can really start taking the genre more seriously. I think everybody in the cast does a great job. You know, say what you will about Terrence Howard. You know, he does what he needs to do, and I think he does a good job doing it. I kind of am curious to see if he hadn't, you know, gotten fired, how he would have been in, you know, future movies. But I mean, you know, all the same, everybody does a good job. Everything looks good. I think it's very appealing to the eye. Plus, you know, there are some jokes in there that I really like, especially like the Jim Cramer Mad Money thing in there.
Oh God.
But yeah, I mean, it's a solid film. I definitely say go and see it if you haven't already.
And with that being said, next time, you won't like us when we're angry, because we're going to be talking about The Incredible Hulk, as everything turns green. With that being said, I am Zenith Rule.
I'm Kat Macberrie.
I built a suit in a cave! I'm Doug Macberrie.
And we will see you next time. Just remember, guys, you may not be Tony Stark, but Tony Stark built this in a cave with a box of scraps.
Hey, this is Megami33. Thank you for watching Zenith Will Review. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more awesome videos. If you like what you see, check out the Patreon page at patreon.com/Zenith Will Review.